Those of you who who may have just joined, I'm Chris with Telin. I'll be running this training for today. If you're on my training yesterday, then you know that. But I think we're kind of just going to dive right into it. So yesterday, I think at the end of the training, I went over call recording. I did have that. That is one of the advanced topics, so I'm just going to go over that quickly once more to begin with. But okay, so uh, admins can uh, change whether call recording is enabled or disabled on a per extension basis. You can actually disable call recording for external calls or internal calls or both if you want. So that can be done from here. You do need a professional or enterprise license, which we're not using for this demo, but that can be enabled or disabled from here. You can also change, if we go over to dashboard and then go to recordings, we can update. Oh, give me 1 second here, actually. Let me switch over to my other instance so you can see this. So if we go to the recordings tab, we can actually see our recording quota. We can change our quota storage space. So right now we've used none of our 5 gig quota just for this demo instance. But this can be changed to whatever you want. Just keep in mind your system specs if you do change this. You also need to restart services if you're going to update the recording quota. You can also have some options like auto cleaning, which will automatically delete older recordings than the amount of days you set here. And then you can set up email notifications. This is going to go to your admin email, which I can show you how to set. That would be set in the setup wizard, but I can show you how to change that or how to check the actual email this is tied to. And you can set that to send an email at whatever percentage of your quota you'd like. You can also choose to compress your recordings. So that admin email, if you go to, let me just switch back to my other instance, sorry. But if we go to settings and then email and notifications, so currently this is my email. Actually, while we're here, so you can actually change what events the emails are sent to this admin email. So as you can see, there's a number of useful events you can set here. So like hard disk is at or near capacity, call to a block country code, etc. So next up, I think we have hot desking. Okay, so I've actually already set up a hot desking extension. Let me switch back once more to my other instance. So if we go to advanced and then hot desking, from here you can actually add your hot desking phones. You're not adding this to any user extension. You have to add it under advanced and hot desking. So you provision it the same way you would a normal phone or any other phone. You just select your phone model, punch in that MAC address, and then it's gonna bring you to the configuration page here, just like you would see like we saw under the user tab phone provisioning yesterday when we provisioned that Snom phone. But hot desking phones you have to provision either with an SBC or locally. So I have this one provisioned with an SBC, and then everything else is the exact same as you would see in a normal phone provisioning scenario for a user extension. So how hot desking works is you assign any phone to to a hot desking extension, and then users can sign in and sign out of that phone and from using a dial code followed by their extension number and then their voicemail pin, and that'll automatically provision that phone to that user extension. It'll also provision a logo button to the first BLF key, so then any users can go in and log in and log out of an extension and make that phone their own for the day or whatever very easily. So that's perfect for like a call center or something like that. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything here. So that dial code is *77*3 followed by the extension number star plus the voicemail pin. It's going to ask you for the voicemail pin after that, and that phone will automatically provision. They can also log out of a hot desking phone using that BLF or using a dial code star 77 star 5 star. And then you can also log in an extension from the management console just by selecting that. Once that extension is logged in, you'll see under status, it's assigned to one of your user extensions. It'll show which user extension that is assigned to. And then you can just hit log out there and that'll log out the extension as well. Okay, so we're going to take a look at extension profiles and forwarding rules now. For this one, let's actually just switch back to this instance permanently now. We shouldn't need that other instance again. Okay, so if we just go to any user extension and go to forwarding rules, so from here you can update forwarding based on this extension status. So whatever status you have selected in this drop-down menu is the forwarding rules you're updating for. So what I mean is right now, internal calls, if I do not answer the call within how many seconds for internal calls, if I am busy for internal calls, after timeout for external, and if I'm busy for external, this is all applying for when I'm in the available status. So if I change to like the away status, now we're updating forwarding rules for the away status. So there's 5 different statuses. 2 of these are custom statuses. So there's available, away, do not disturb, and then this is custom 1 and this is custom 2. So you can actually update the name for lunch and business trip, custom 1 and custom 2, under settings, options, and then right here. But so how each of these forwarding rules work is if you're in either the available or custom ring 1, there is options. Your phone will ring. So you can set up your phone will ring as opposed to away, do not disturb, and custom 2. Your phone is not going to ring. It's going to send it directly to this forwarding destination. So just keep that in mind when you're setting up these forwarding routes. But so let's look at some of the options we have here. So you can obviously change you can change routing for internal calls and external calls based on your extension status. You also have a number of options down here, like ring my mobile simultaneously, which I mentioned yesterday. If you have a mobile number attached to your extension, the general tab, you can choose to ring your mobile phone, ring that mobile number at the same time as your IP phone or whatever you have attached to this extension. You can also choose to accept multiple calls. So this is accepting multiple calls from queues or DID, direct inbound dial direct to your extension. So what this means is when you're on the phone, you'll see and your phone will ring for any new calls that come in. That is actually not the case with ring groups though. If you're in a ring group and a second call comes in, even if you have accept multiple calls enabled, that's not going to ring your extension. There is a way around that. It's a parameter. If we look at allow use, so this one, allow use busy option for a group. If you change 0 to a 1 to enable this parameter, any calls to ring groups, any second calls to ring groups while you're on the phone will also ring your extension. Okay, so then log out from queues, that's pretty straightforward. Accept calls from ring groups, that's also pretty straightforward. And accept push notifications. This will just allow this extension to send push notifications to your mobile device. And then we have, you can also set up multiple greetings based on your extension status. So here at the bottom, currently we're changing the greeting inbound callers received when I'm in the available status. And then we can change it for if you're DND or any of the other statuses. So you can also add BLF buttons. to control your status. There's dial codes to control your status. So, like for example, they're all *3 dial codes. So, like *30 will change you to the available status. *31 will change you to away. *32 will change you to D&D. But you can also program BLF keys to do that for you. So change status. We can have BLF1 to change status to available, and BLF2 to change status to D&D. So you can also set up your profile auto switch. So what this does, if we go over to my web client here, um, so on any user's web client, this has to be done on the web client. But if you go to settings and then call forwarding and then switch status, you can set up automatic switching of your status from available to D&D depending on your office hours. So you can set this to use your default system operator operation hours, or you can use the specific office hours. So if we set specific office hours, we can change. So if I had um, Monday 9 to 6 set, then at 9 a.m. on Monday, our extension is automatically going to change to the available status, and at 6 p.m. it's going to change to D&D. Okay, so I think let's move on to exceptions now. So still in the forwarding rules tab of any user extension. Oh, actually, no, I missed something on that. So one other, so clearly I just showed you a way to do this on a per extension basis, but you have to be logged into that user to actually change that. You can also set a user, if a user has uh, the correct privileges, I believe they can be a group administrator, group owner, system admin, or system owner, as long as the users are a part that you're trying to control are part of that same group. You can set group admin or group owner. You'll have access to this admin tab on the web client, and then if you just go to users and then go to, like, I'm all assigned into 101, and we can update 102, and then if we go to schedule, we can change that for them from an admin user. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything here. Okay, now I think we're good. So let's move on to exceptions. So exceptions are similar to, they are essentially forwarding rules. They're caller ID based forwarding rules. And they're processed, if a call hits this extension, they're processed before anything else. So what I mean is they're processed before any of these forwarding options you set up here. These exceptions are processed first. So what you can do is set your extension to process calls from certain caller IDs in a different way and during certain times, based on whatever you configure here. So I can say calls from 333, 444, 5555 during Monday 8 to 5. I want that to go to a separate extension, so 101. What you can also do with this, which is very cool, is you can set up a time-based forwarding extension. So normally you can only set I believe 3 different times on your as your default office hours. You can set in office, out of office, and your break times. But with if we use exceptions for an extension, what we can do is say calls from caller ID and use the wildcard, so calls from any caller ID with any number length, received during, let's say, then you can set specific hours. So let's say Monday to 8 to 5. We want that to go to an IVR. And then we want to add, so you can add as many of these as you want. So we can set during Monday, let's say we have a lunchtime or something, Monday 12 to 1, we can set that to go to our voicemail. But you can add as many these as you want, so you can essentially have as many office hours as you want. One important thing to note is these are checked in top-down priority. Um, so just be aware of that. Um, so if a caller ID can match, let's say it's going to check this first rule first. If it's not Monday between 12 and 1, it's going to move on to the next exception. Okay, so you can add as many of those as you want, and it's a way for you to add uh, as many specific office hours as you'd like a single day. Um, but yeah. Okay, so I think let's move on to E911 configuration. So where do you configure E911 rules? You go to settings and then general and then emergency numbers. So what does this emergency number rule do? It allows you to set a caller ID based on the number dialed. Um, So what I mean is we can say match this rule to the number 911. So when users dial 911, it's going to match to this. Uh, it's essentially an outbound rule. And then what you can do is tie an outbound caller ID to this E911 rule. You have to um, work with your SIP trunk provider to get an address associated with whichever caller ID you want to use. But what this allows for is anytime 911 is dialed, it'll always go out as this caller ID, which has your address attached, which has the correct address attached, so that 911 operator can get emergency services to you as quickly as possible. There is usually fines for calling 911 with an unregistered number. So it's always an important piece, and I see a lot of people miss this in their 3CX setups. You want to make sure to add 911 rules. But there's a second part to this. So what if you have an instance and there's two or more physical locations associated with this instance? So there's users from two separate physical locations. Obviously, you don't want them to show the incorrect location because so you need all users from each location to go with the correct caller ID, which has their address attached. So how do you do that? With extension groups. So what we want to do is go to the users tab, set up a group. You'd want to set up two groups if it's two physical locations, and then add the users from each group, from each physical location into their own group. And then you set up two 911 roles. So set up the same way, two different 911 roles, each with the group uh, and outbound caller ID that are associated with each other. And that way, anytime any users from either location call 911, the 911 operator is always going to see the correct physical address. Okay, so let's take a look at messaging and SMS. So we're not going to go over like chat, like website chat integration, but I will kind of briefly touch on it. We will actually set up SMS for a user here. So how chat in general works. So this includes chats with integrated chats with Facebook, website live chat, and SMS. All of those chats are going to go to either your 3CX app or your 3CX web client under the chat tab here. And you can see all messages from any of those locations that show up here. So it makes it super handy to be able to control and send and receive messages from multiple different spots, all from one UI here. But to actually set up like SMS, for example, this is done as long as you're using an SMS provider. That SMS tab, there's an SMS tab that should show up here. So this may be different from from provider to provider, but I'm just setting this up based on our SIP trunk configuration. Um, but it's going to be more or less the same. So essentially, what you need to do is plug in some details um, that your SIP trunk provider gives you. This is going to be the account SID and auth token, and then you're going to provide the your SIP trunk provider this webhook URL. Maybe be able to just paste it in yourself to a number if they have some kind of portal that allows you to do that, like we do. But let's actually just actually set up a number for SMS. So I'm not going to copy this stuff in right now. Um, so it's not going to work, but we'll just pretend that I have. All right. So I've already actually added in a number. So that's 253 number. So how SMS used to be handled is under the advanced tab, there's like an SMS and Facebook tab. The 3CX got rid of that. So how do you control routing for your SMS now? It's all handled. Voice and SMS are both handled through your inbound rule. So there's no two separate rules like there used to be. Um, so right now, voice and SMS for this number is going to follow this routing. So you have a number of destinations you can set for SMS that'll work for SMS. Well, actually, every possible destination will work for SMS. So digital receptionists, ring groups, queues, or directly to a user extension. And if you send it to like a ring group or a queue, it's going to send that SMS to every user in that ring group or queue. But what happens if some additional configuration is required if you're sending this to an IVR? So if you send this to an IVR and haven't done anything else, then that's just not going to work. What you have to do, you can actually do this from your management console. But if you go to your web client, you have to be on an admin user. And if we go to the admin tab at the bottom here, and then go to call handling, and then we find this IVR, so it's my 800 test IVR, and we click edit. We can go to the options tab, and we'll have this option right here, forward SMS. So then you can choose if SMS messages hit this IVR, where to forward those SMS messages to. So I do see a lot of people ask sometimes, like sometimes you don't want your voice and your SMS to go to the same destination. So how do you is there like a way to have two separate destinations? And there kind of is. It's maybe a little broken, but I'll show you it anyway. But it's just setting an IVR and then setting the IVR destination for if no input within like 1 second. And then you'd connect this to your whichever destination you want the voice to go to, and set the if in prompt if input is invalid, and that would be your intended voice destination as well. And then this way, this IVR essentially it's going to slow down your calling by 1 second, but this way you'll be able to set unique SMS routing based on that IVR forwarding SMS rule we just looked at. It's not the best solution, but it is a solution. um, so how to actually send in my SMS? So let's go to the chat tab. If you have SMS configured correctly and you click the plus icon here, you'll see a start SMS chat show up. Actually, we should be able to just quickly enable this. We shouldn't actually need to make it work, but if I just go, that should work. Okay, it doesn't like that. Give me 1 second. I'll actually just make this work. Okay, I think we're good to go. Let me reshare my screen here. Okay, so we should have the SMS tab showing up now. We should actually be able to send an SMS. So let's just try sending a text here. So I clicked send an SMS, start chat. This actually has to be E164 formatted. And then let's start a chat here. Say hello. And if we get 2 checks, then that message went through. It looks like it did. We should receive a text in just a second here. There we go. Easy as that. So a couple things I should note about SMS here. So if you have an SMS going to, if you have your inbound role set to go to like in a ring group or a queue, that SMS is going to multiple extensions. How SMS works is the first, so when the initial SMS comes in from the external party, it's going to go to all the users in that ring group, let's say. As soon as one of those users, as soon as one of your users on your instance responds, they now take ownership of that message, of that external messaging party. So what that means is any future messages that come from that external party will go to that user who responded and who took ownership of that conversation. If you want future messages to go back to go to all users in that ring group again, you just have to mark the conversation as done. So pressing the little check mark here, and then once that's cleared out, all future messages will go to all users in that ring group or queue again. Okay, so let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. The SMS part of our presentation. No, I think that was it for messaging and SMS. So let's move on to setting up a bridge. Okay, so you can set up a bridge between 3CX instances. What this allows for is extension to extension calls across the bridge between 3CX systems. It also allows you to see presence information of user extensions on another PBX. So like on your web client, if we just go to the team tab, we can actually see if we had a bridge set up, we could see users from another instance, just like we can with our own instance. We can see users and their extension status, their presence information, right from your web client or 3CX app. Okay, so how do we do this? We do this in the SIP trunks tab. So we'll go to add bridge, and it should be a master bridge. So a couple things to note: name of the bridge does not matter, so we can just call this master. The virtual extension number does matter. So this has to match what the slave bridge has to match exactly. So my slave bridge is 10,005, so we're going to match that here. Outbound rule prefix. So this is a prefix you can set for making calls across this bridge. We're going to set the prefix of 3. And that will change what our outbound, what we have to configure on our outbound rule after this. So you can set a number of maximum simultaneous calls just like you can on a SIP trunk. So we'll keep that on 10. And then, so this authentication password has to match on both sides. I've already set one on my slave side, so let me just copy that over here. And then we can also just plug in our IP here. IP and the tunnel port, unless you changed it, it should always be 5090. And then if we go to the presence tab, We can choose. So there's a couple things to note. Um, our presence will not show to the other 3CX system unless we have publish information selected, and then you can attach a group, and any users in that group that their presence information for those users will be transmitted across the bridge. So we're going to say we want to receive information from our, let's just, oh, it's because we're in our professional, we're on our standard license. So we could just plug in our FQDN, sorry, IP or FQDN here. And we'd also need our HTTPS port attached to this to show presence of information. So I can't actually save this, so I can't show you, but you'll just have to trust me that um, this would be correct and this should come up as is. As long as you've matched your virtual extension number, gotten your authentication password matched on both sides, and then gotten the IP tunnel port correct and the IP or FQDN and HTTPS port, that bridge would come up and you'd be able to see presence of information across that bridge. So there is a second part um, to making calls across a bridge. So if we just set that up as is, calls over that bridge are not going to work. We also have to set up an outbound role. So I said my outbound role prefix is going to be 3. Calls to numbers with prefix 3. And we can do calls to length numbers with length of 4. So we're calling between two extensions that are both 3 digits long. But we're going to be including this 3 prefix. So the total number length should be 4 when calling across a bridge. What we can do here is set route 1 to go over the bridge. If we had that bridge configured, this would show up in the drop-down menu here. And then we can just strip out our prefix, our 3 prefix, and send that call across the bridge. And it's as easy as that. And you have to set that up on both 3CX systems, assuming you want calling across in both directions. Okay, so we don't actually have to save this rule because we're not going to need it. Okay, so that was bridges. So let's move on to security and anti-fraud. So all your security settings can be found under the security tab. Let's actually just go over a few common types of attacks. So the most common type of attack is just a brute force attack. Brute force attacks will generally target the PBX for an attack. Will try to guess an extension's credentials. This includes the extension number, SIP username, and authentication password. So I see for especially older systems, 3CX used to just use, going to the phone provisioning tab for user extension, they used to just use the extension number for the ID. So the ID would be 100, and then the password was like 5, length of 5 or so. And I believe it didn't even have numbers, or maybe it wasn't capitals or something, but it was very weak. So I see some, like, I do see it happen once in a while where somebody gains access to like an older system. But if you have a newer system where that's been built in the last, I don't know how many years, like 3 years plus, it'll use a much stronger ID and then password as well. You can also change this. So by default, the ID and password are both length of 10 with uppercase, lowercase, and numbers. But you can change this to be up to 30, length of 30 for both the ID and password. So yeah, just keep that in mind. So the next most common type of attack would be a denial of service attack that prevents you from utilizing your 3CX system through either sending packet floods, which take up server resources, to the point that there's not enough resources to actually run the 3CX system. There's also dictionary attacks, so attempts to use default passwords or simple word passwords or variations of words to log into your system. So this is why you want to make sure that your admin user is all your passwords are extremely secure. So make sure your admin login password is not like just a word or birth date or whatever. Make sure that's a random set of uppercase, lowercase numbers and symbols if you can would be best. And to do like a length of like 21 or greater is excellent. So why would people want to attack at all? It gives them the ability to place calls to very expensive destinations at your expense, and they usually profit from reselling these calls to individuals or companies. So what kind of security prevention do you have? So this is more for if you're on if you're hosting your instance on site. Some of this will apply if you have a cloud hosted instance as well. But step one, you want to make sure you have good physical security. So protect access to the premises. Give physical access on a need-to-have basis, so like to your server room or whatnot. For network security, only open firewall ports that you need open. Disable WAN access if you don't need it. And then for device security, make sure passwords on switches are changed from defaults. Lock your screen on any admin PCs when you're away. Make sure on your operating system, if you're hosting your instance on Windows, make sure, or Linux, make sure all OS updates have been applied. Make sure, so I did kind of go over, make sure your extension and admin account, username and password are very secure, or, um, and then give access only on a need-to-have basis. And then set up, and then for data security, when you take backups, encrypt your backups. So I don't think I touched on backups yesterday, but if you go to backups, click backup, you choose to encrypt your backups with a password. Keep in mind there is absolutely no way to recover a backup if you've lost the password or forgot the password. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, when you take backups, if you schedule backups, make sure that they're encrypted with a password. So another some 3CX specific security measures you can take here are you can do things like if you go to the users tab here and we go to options, if you have any unused extensions, you can actually just disable that extension entirely. You can also disable external calls on extensions. Um, you don't want to, that don't need to make external calls. Do that as much as you can. If an extension doesn't need to make external calls, then disable external calls. So pin protect, this forces any external calls, this forces a voicemail pin to be placed in before that external call will actually go through. Another option here. So if you saw yesterday when I provisioned that one phone via stun, yeah, the Stom phone here, initially I got that banner saying block remote phones using stun was enabled. So by default, this setting is enabled. So unless you need stun phones, always keep this setting disabled on all your extensions. If you don't need 3CX apps, block remote tunnel connections. So another thing we can do here, if you go to settings, general, we can disable outbound calls outside of office hours. So why might you want to do this? Well, the story I've heard from our CTO, Josh, who's on this call too, is they had an end user who was complaining about these insanely high international calls for I don't know a month or something, and they eventually figured out what was. They thought nobody was making. Couldn't figure out who was making these international calls and what was going on there. So eventually they found out it was a cleaner who had just been sitting there on the job calling wherever. It was racking up hundreds or thousands of dollars in international calls every month. So disable if they don't need to make outbound calls outside of office hours, just disable it. Keep in mind, one thing I should note here is any extensions that have outbound calling disabled for any reason, so any of those settings I just mentioned, they can still call emergency services always. So One more thing I'll note for user extension security is you can also change by default, the voicemail pin is only length of 4. You can change this to be up to a length of 10. So next up, let's look over. I know we did look over during the setup wizard yesterday, but for those who missed it, let's look at allowed country codes. This one's really important. Um, so if we go to security, allowed country codes, this will allow you to enable or disable certain country codes, um, any country codes, and I would keep as many disabled as you possibly can. If a 3CX system, users on your 3CX system only need to call the US and Canada, then just keep the US and Canada enabled. And if they have to call, if they find another place they have to call in the future, then only enable that location as well. Enable it on a as needed basis. So if we go down to actually users and then I lost my place here. Give me just one sec here. Okay, so you can also choose if you go to phone provisioning, switch to our 3CX app. We can choose to enable secure SIP over TLS and a secure RDP mode, which is turning on only secure. You can also enable these both on an IP phone, but it does allow you to it does require you to manually configure the phones and upload certificates directly to that phone. Um, one other thing I'll mention. So if you do change to secure RTP, secure SIP, the 3CX app does need to be restarted. Okay, so let's go over some of our anti-hacking settings here. So what are these settings? So automatic global 3CX IP blacklist. This will allow you to exchange any IPs that you've blacklisted with a list of known nefarious IPs that 3CX has. So if you enable this, it's going to blacklist it. You'll see a bunch of IPs show up in your IP blacklist. It'll blacklist those IPs and 3CX just once your blacklisted IPs in return. That's kind of a give and take scenario. So failed authentication protection just defines how many failed requests the PBX will accept from any particular IP before placing it into the blacklist. So if an IP phone fails to register 5 times, it's going to blacklist that IP. We can actually see the IP blacklist in 2-spot security and then IP blacklist, or on your dashboard, there's an IP blacklist under info. So failed challenge requests. When a host tries to register to your PBX, the PBX is going to send a challenge that needs to be responded to. A bogus host will usually not respond to these challenges, but will instead try to flood the PBX with requests. PBX will then ignore any bogus register attempts from that particular IP if it exceeds this amount here. So right now we have that set to 1,000. Or there we go. So here we can set the blacklist time interval. That's pretty straightforward. How long is an IP going to remain in your blacklist before it's automatically removed by default? This is 86,400 seconds currently. Okay, so we're going to look at security barrier green, amber, and red as a whole. So what is the green barrier? Yeah, what does our green barrier do? when the PBX detects a packet coming from a particular IP address, it will start taking a sampling for the duration of the green security barrier. So this is 200 milliseconds. It's going to take. It's going to start. Um, it's going to start that sampling period for those 200 milliseconds. Depending on the number of packets that's received during that 200 milliseconds, the PBX will take necessary action based on your amber and red um, security barriers. It will throttle the traffic from this IP for 5 seconds if the amount of packets received is exceeded by the amber barrier. So if we receive more than 2,000 packets in a 200 millisecond time interval, it's going to block that source IP for 5 seconds. If it exceeds the a number of packets in our red barrier in those 200 milliseconds, it's just going to blacklist that IP. So our live chat request protection, this is simply the maximum allowable requests per the duration we set here before an IP will be blacklisted, specifically for live chats, of course. So SSL secure SIP transport and ciphers, this will leave only TLS 1.2 enabled and may prevent, this also may prevent old legacy phones and old 3CX apps from connecting remotely to your system. Enable provisioning secret key. This will essentially give you a unique provisioning URL per phone. So if you've ever noticed, if under the phone provisioning tab, when you attach a phone, those provisioning URLs are always the same, and it uses like a variable for the MAC address. This is going to enable like a unique provisioning URL on a per user basis. Um, So, okay, I did mention at the start, but I had email notifications listed here. I already showed you guys that, so let's move on from that. Okay, so let's go over some of our logging options. So if we go to dashboard, we'll see at the bottom here, we have an event log, activity log, and audit log. So under events, we can see a summary of events such as registrations for extensions, and then registrations for like SIP providers or bridges, things like that. And there's 3 different levels of warnings: events, which are blue; errors, which are yellow. Informational messages, which are blue; errors, which are yellow; and warnings, which are red. Requests sent to, let me see. So you can also see blacklisted IPs listed here, and then a reason why. So it kind of gives you just an easy summary of different registration events, etc., that have occurred on your 3CX system. So under the activity log, this allows us, so dashboard activity log, this allows us to see basic SIP flow messages given by the 3CX system. So in relation to things like phone registrations, interactions with gateways and VoIP providers, as well as information on calls that are being processed by the 3CX system. You can change the logging level if you want more or less information showing. So if you go to under settings there, you can disable logging, or you can turn it up to verbose. Yeah, keep in mind verbose is CPU intensive, and you should restart services before these changes take effect. You can also change how long these backup logs are kept for, how many days. Another thing you can do from the activity log is actually run a network capture. So we can here we can select which interface we want to capture on, and then if we just hit capture, this is going to start a network capture. So just some quick pointers on running network captures. Let's say so you always want to start the capture before, but the problem has occurred, of course. But that also means for if you're trying to take a network capture for like a call, you want to start the network capture before the call has even begun, and then you want to end that capture after that call is completely ended. So not just before and after the issue occurred. So what we can do here is just click stop. So the only place you can download the network capture is right here. So if you just spent 20 minutes taking a network capture and you see this screen and you click OK, you just lost that network capture. There's no other place to grab it. You have to grab it from right here, from this link. Okay, let me just make sure there's nothing I missed here. So you can actually see some system logs here too. If we go to log files and then go to instance, you can see a number of logs. So like IVR logs, phone system, general logs, and a lot of these can be pretty helpful in certain scenarios. So actually, what we can do, because we got some time left, is actually just run a network capture. Let's get a call on a network capture, and then we can actually take a look at that. All right, let me stop sharing here just for 1 second. I'm going to get this number set up. Actually, I think we already set up. All right, never mind. On second thought, we shouldn't have to do anything. Let me just make a call to this number. We're going to start our network capture. If we go change this to all interfaces and click capture. Okay, and that is ring my test extension. I'm not going to pick that up. Actually, maybe I will. So you can see the entire call flow. Okay, so that's answered. All right, now I'm going to hang that up. That's all we needed. Okay, so now that the call is fully ended, I can click stop and then download our capture. So let's actually we're just going to go over the invite here for this capture. We can take a brief look at the call flow as well. So if we go to, okay, so this is our network capture. If you haven't seen Wireshark before, it looks very confusing when you first get on because this is just captured any traffic in or out of this 3CX system in that duration that we were running this capture. So as you can see, we get a bunch of packets. But something you can do, which is very helpful, if you just want to see a call that was made during this time, if you go to telephony and then VoIP calls, we can actually see any calls that occurred. These are going to be different call legs. Let's different call legs of the same call. So let's take a look at this right here. Let's prepare filter.
Hey, Chris, can you change your aspect ratio on your machine? People can't read any of this.
Oh, yeah. This should be a bit better. Give me just 1 sec here. All right. How does that look? Oh, you found it. Okay. Yeah, activity log, if anyone was wondering, is just on the dashboard in the bottom right. That is better? Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, so where were we at here? So let's filter our packets. So this is going to filter that main section we were looking at. Let's hide this and so let's filter by this leg of the call. So let's prepare filter, and there we go. So we can see that. So we can see a couple things here. First of all, you can see the time. So this is the time. This is not the actual time. This is the duration after we started our capture um, that this packet was received. We can see the source. So the source IP where this packet came from. We can see where this. Oh, whoops. We can see the destination IP. So where this packet is going to. And then we can see which protocol that packet was using, and we can see the request. We can see the packet type. So the packet we're most interested in is the invite here. So let's actually take a look at this invite. Um, Actually, I take that back. Let me do one thing very quickly first. Instead, let's go look at this call like just so this makes a little bit more sense. It's easier to see it if you look at flow sequence. That probably looks very small. Let me just make this a little bit bigger again. Okay, well, that didn't really work. Okay, hopefully you can see that, but this is blurry for me too on the sides if you can see that. But we're looking at this is just the set message flow. So we can see from this IP to this IP, an invite was sent. So this is how a call is set up. So we'll get an invite. Then that destination will send a trying, and then if that destination that received the invite is able to find whichever extension or whichever destination is requested in the invite, it's going to show that as ringing. It's going to send ringing to the originator destination, and then you'll see RTP. So RTP is voice packets. Um, and then during when that call is hung up, you'll just see a buy request from whoever hung up that call. Uh, I might have to explain this just in our main view here. I think that's a little.
Hey, yeah, hey Chris, that's only half the leg. Can you highlight both top of those and then click view?
Give me 1 second here.
Yeah, that one. Click highlight both of those and then flow sequence.
Oh, could you actually see that?
Yeah. So now you're looking at the full leg of the call from the downstream provider to the server public IP, back to the downstream provider, and to the RTP endpoint or the audio proxy.
Yeah.
So now you're seeing the full leg of the call here.
So let's go take a look at this invite here. So whenever a call is made, the very first packet that's sent is an invite. This is going to include a bunch of information. Um, so we're going to get, if we actually select this packet, we can see which information is included in this packet. Now, if I look under the SIP part of this message and look at message headers, this is where a lot of the important information is going to be held. So we can see the from header. This is where the packet is coming from, obviously. We can also see additional information in these drop-down menus, like the number included in like user part, so you can see which number that's coming from. Um, whoops. To header, where is the packet going to, including number and IP. The contact header, this is, where is the contact header? Right down here. So this is what IP that destination um, should be responding to this invite on. So call ID, this is going to be a call lag identifier number. So this is a unique alphanumeric identifier, which will include all packets sent and received on this call lag. So we could actually filter by this call ID and see any packets that are associated with this call lag. So just like that. So VIA, let's go take a look at VIA. So VIA, this is each intermediate SIP point a call goes through, whether this is a PBX or a VoIP provider, will add its own address into the VIA header. This will allow the return call to go through the same path on the reverse route to find the original calling party. So the CSEC header, let's take a look at that right here. So this is also known as the command sequence header. This will link packets within a call lag together. Responses will have the same CSEC number. For an example, would be like a response to an invite. And then let's look at so user agent header. This will identify the SIP endpoint the packet is being sent from. That's sending the packet. So if you're making an outbound call from like a SNOM, it would generally show like a SNOM D785 or something here. Okay, so yeah, that's a call. So we can see, actually, let's open up both legs of these calls again.
Can you open up the body?
Yep.
Body's a very important part of your SIP setup. So I'll take this one. So the message body is your SDP, which is going to define your media routes. So essentially in the SDP, you will see your codecs and in the priority, as well as the IP address that you are sending media to and receiving media from. So this is a really good one to take a look at because this particular field is highly affected in ALG situations. So if you think you might have an ALG issue, you got one-way audio, definitely take a look at SDP. ALG will remap this pretty quickly.
Okay, so let's, I think we're done with the packet capture. Let's go take a look. Let me fix this actually.
Yeah, so we got a question from David. Chris, if you can just go to the SIP trunk, go to one of our SIP trunks outbound parameters.
Yep.
And scroll down to the from display name. So you'll see the from display name here, David. That is going to be the name that you're sending. A lot of times it's default to outbound caller ID. However, you can set it as a custom field and type in your own name that you want to send on your outbound calls. Or if you click that drop down, you have a laundry list of areas that you can draw that data from. Caller name is a big part of it. But there's a laundry list of items you can send in the display name field.
Okay, so I think the last thing we're going to look at is the audit logs. The audit log is somewhat new. It was added in V18. So this is excellent. This is excellent. I used to come across an issue, I don't know, every so often where something would break on a 3CX system, and people would be pointing fingers and whatnot, and you could never find out what happened or what broke an instance, like broken inbound rule. And now they have an audit log, so you can actually see any changes made on the 3CX system, what user made those changes, what public IP address that those changes were made from, and then you can see, of course, which item was changed. So if you look at our details here, we can see that. So first of all, let's take a look. So my extension I'm currently logged into, updated the IVR. Um, so this is the previous values, and this is the updated values. So it looks like we just updated an inbound rule um, from from an IVR to a user extension. So previous values, updated values, and then what was actually changed here. So that's super helpful. Under settings, you can change how often the audit log is purged. So by default, that's set to 1 month. I believe that's default. You can also export your audit log into a CSV file, and you can filter your audit log by anything, any changes made. So it's super handy. Let me just make sure I went over everything here. I guess the last thing we'll check, I briefly touched on backups and restores, but let's take a look at let's take a deeper look at backups and restores here. So to manually take a backup, by default, backups will be taken to just the local disk of the 3CX system. And you can choose what information you're going to take on your backup. So we can give a backup name, backup one, and then you can decide which information you want included in this backup. Um, if you're going to change your FQDN, I'll just note this now, but if you're going to see sometimes people want to change their FQDN, if you do want to change your FQDN, you want to make sure to take your backup without the license key information FQDN. And then during, if you're using the same license key, you got to make sure to disconnect or release the FQDN from that license key as well. But yeah, you have a number of options here for taking that backup. Default location is going to be the local disk, but you can also change this to be an FTP server, Google Storage, SFB, or SFTP server. And then, so you can also do backup schedules. So this will take a backup with whichever parameters you set at whatever interval you set those to be taken at. So we could do like a weekly on Sunday. And then, so you also have a backup rotation option here. So this is how many backups will be kept before the oldest backup is overwritten with your new backup. So let's say we did 3, and we set that to daily. Then every 3 days, our oldest backup is going to be overwritten with our newest backup, or every day it is once that gets going. But yeah. So next up, let's take a look at our restore schedule. So you can set up a restore schedule as well to restore from a backup at whichever location you want to set here as well. So this is particularly useful if you're doing a failover. So how do you do a failover? You need 2 instances. They both have to be identical instances. You can use a pro or enterprise key. Yeah, but a pro key is rough because it takes like 5 hours or something for your secondary instance to come back up, for that FQDN to change over to that 3CX IP. It's a while, so you almost need to have an enterprise key if you want to use failover. If you do have an enterprise key, it's only 5 minutes, I believe, for that FQDN to failover to your secondary. But assuming that you have that set up, all you want to do is change your active server to active, press OK, and then you'd go on your passive instance, assuming they're using the same license key and FQDN, and you change this to passive, and you put the IP of your primary instance. You can set a number of failover tests that your passive instance will check for, and then you can set intervals between tests. choose whether you want this passive instance to come up when one test or when all tests fail. And then you can also set up failover scripts as well. But so assuming you set that up, you'd want to, as soon as you've enabled the passive mode on your passive server and you press OK, it's going to take down most services. So that instance will be in like a sleep mode until it detects that your active server is having an issue. So that's important for a reschedule as well. So you want your secondary instance to be restoring from like a common like Google Drive or something. So it's always identical, or basically identical to what your primary active server has. Okay, and I think that was pretty well everything. Yeah, I think that was pretty much everything. Do we have any questions? We still got a bunch of time left, so you can sit here for a while and just can ask as many questions as you want. Thanks, Matt. Glad you enjoyed it. How do you handle recordings between the primary and secondary? So you mean like new recordings that are taken if the passive server comes up? That's a tough one. So what you could do is you can manually upload recording files. I forget where it is on the back end, but you can extract recordings from the back end and then manually place those into your another instance if you wanted to. But yeah, so yeah, obviously the active server isn't going to be restoring from the passive server's backup. I mean, well, I guess you could do that too. So what you could do is just as soon as you're ready to fail your passive to back to the active, you could just take a backup and restore your active server from that. Josh, do you have a better idea?
I mean, you could do that. I mean, ultimately, remote archiving is probably the way to go. And the CDR record's not going to be there, as I think David just pointed out. The CDR record won't be there, but the remote archiving, the CDR records can be repaired. But that's, I mean, it's designed to be a hot failover that I guess that you're not on all the time. I don't think there really is a huge like a smooth way of doing it. I mean, the remote archiving is going to help. You could take a backup of it real quick and restore it to your primary server, which might get kind of crazy. I mean, most HA servers aren't, pushing back and forth recordings just because of the sheer sizes of them. Some people do, but really the only way is to enable the remote archiving. Jamie, I'm not sure what you're asking. With the exhaustion of IPv4s, are there any multi-tenant or proxy options to avoid using dedicated static IPs? There are multiple ways of, getting away from not using static IPs. I think, the buzz of IP4 is running out, hurry up and rush is a little bit more overplayed. I mean, IPv6 is just going to kick in, and we're going to have a whole new set of addresses that are available to us. So I wouldn't really concern yourself too much on that. Remote archiving, if you go on your dashboard, so just hit your dashboard, click on recordings, and you go to location for the recordings. You can enable your remote archiving, where it's going to go, and the schedule policy.
Andre, what are you looking for exactly? Most 3CX documentation should be up to date. We also have our own 3CX, our own YouTube channel, which has a bunch of good 3CX related content. Some of it is management console and management related, but a lot, we do have like end user content available as well. Like our, let me just throw our YouTube link in the chat here.
So, Robbie, and I'm not going to try to pronounce your first name, so I'll probably butcher it. I don't do that to you. So, Robbie, yeah, you can create users that have access to just call recordings. That's you can give access. You can put them in groups and say this user has access to all of this group's recordings. Chris, can you show the user settings for call recordings?
Can see group recordings here. So this extension can see any recordings in
anyone in the system owner group.
In the default group. Yeah, in the default group.
No, you're under system owner right now. Yeah, that's the system owner group.
If we go to groups here, we can change it there too. Group rights, and then you can choose if they have this level of this access level for this group, they'll have these options available. So like system owner, yeah, it does have the group recordings. You can see group recordings.
Andre, there's nothing as of right now. I mean, really the only documentation out there is the 3CX Academy. I mean, I suppose you could download the PDFs and run it through an editor and white label it. I don't know if, I think they have some decent training docs on the web client, but we don't have anything ourselves, or I don't know of anyone that has any white labeled ones that you could reuse. Any other questions, guys? I think Mona, can you share the DoorDash sign up, please, for everybody anyone that wasn't here yesterday to go on and sign up for their DoorDash credit? So guys, Mona's gonna share a link in the chat here. If you don't click on it and sign up, you're not gonna get your DoorDash credit, so make sure you do so. Any other questions from anybody? Feel free to throw them in the chat. Feel free to email sales@telin.com or support@telin.com. If you have no further questions and you have signed up for your DoorDash, then you may stay if you want to see what other people's questions are, but looks like we're done a little early today. Yeah, Andre, obviously we can't give you any examples of a CRM integration. We don't have any, demo CRM environments to connect to, but Chris can show you where the CRM integration area is.
I believe that's settings, and then
yeah, so they're all server side CRM integrations. And yeah, you can download those if you want. Those are just new ones, so I'll look in Day2, but if you click add there, I mean, there's, let's see, client, it's client side legacy, that's why. You gotta go server side. Yeah, right there. Yep. What version of 360 are you using? You don't have their server side.
We're in 18. They're on the latest.
That's weird. Are you on maybe Pro?
Oh no, we're on standard. That's why. Here, let me do this.
Yeah. So there's two fields there. I mean, it looks like he's using a free standard. But when you click on this, yeah, so server side integrate. Wrong one. Client side is
Oh,
legacy.
whoops,
Server
there
side
we
is
go.
Chris. Yeah. So you just click the drop down. There's a list of them. They're all really easy. Like click Zoho real quick. They're all pretty easy. I mean, everything's pre-filled out. You just really got to grab your ID and secret and kind of go from there. The integrations are real fast. Can you explain the difference between CRM and database options? Let me click that link and see what you're reading. Integrate 3.6 with your CRM. 3.6 develop, maintain, and integrate. XYZ. So like the SQL database and stuff is, I mean, that's just database integrations, right? A lot of times you use databases for like your CFD, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just saying that you can connect to these, that they have tested and you can connect to these. MongoDB, though, I think is an actual CRM. But essentially they're database structured. Well, so if you're using the CFD app, yes, you can connect to both. So your CRM would be your primary in the CFD. If you needed to do like a database integration to connect, then you would have to do that in the CFD. But it looks like the SQL databases and stuff. I mean, they're all the same thing. It's just an integration to create data tables and store customer data and journaling. They're just not. It's not an actual CRM company.
Well, we still got 30 minutes slotted for this. If anyone has any more questions, let us know.
What kind of setup do you mean when you say it'd be nice to see an actual setup at some point in time? See a lot of possibilities here. I mean, what kind of, Andre, what kind of setup do you mean? A few of them came in. Do you have any practice exams for the advanced test? No practice exams, Lawrence. 3.6 keeps that under lock and key. A digital receptionist or IVR is just an inbound route where somebody dials into the system and there's an intro prompt or a message where users can interact and dial 1 for this or dial 2 for this or 3 for this or press 0 for that. That is what a digital receptionist is. Oh, HubSpot plus SQL. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to do that, Andre. I mean, it's going to definitely be a use case scenario to see what you're trying to accomplish. Recording for this training will be sent out an email by end of day today. Amen. Sorry, I'm just firing through these questions. Keep them coming, guys. We got some time if you want. Yeah, Chris, you just want to
Yeah, just like
brief over fax one more time?
like for setting up a fax ATA.
Yeah, so I mean, again, Robbie, I mean, this is how you would set up an ATA for fax. It's not recommended. It's not reliable. It's not compliant in any kind of compliance requirements. The best way to go with fax is not try to fax through voice over IP and use an eFax service. You can still use traditional fax machines with eFax service using a ATA that communicates via HTTPS, which is compliant and secure. So you don't have to get rid of the physical fax machine, but a eFax service is the way to go. If you reach out to sales@telin.com, they can provide some information. We have a great eFax service.
How reliable is a fax
So
over
SQL
M365?
database.
Lawrence, it's fine, but unless you have that fax ATA, you can only do inbound 236, like to fax to email.
And Lawrence, again, jitter dependent, right? Or packet drop dependent. Fax is a fax, right? It's not like a call. One drop packet is a huge chunk of data. So your fax will fail. So let's just read what Andre's saying here. SQL database to be used as a part of a customer data platform. Data is pulled from the CRM and stored in the database using the same 3CX structure. I mean, Andre, the structure is just configured, right? I'm just not sure what you're trying to accomplish. I think this is going to probably be a bigger conversation. What you're trying to accomplish, we could probably do for you. I'm not sure why you'd want to store the same data twice, unless you're just trying to get rid of HubSpot. I'm just not entirely clear on what you're trying to accomplish here. If you reach out to our sales department, we can schedule a call and kind of go over it. I'm sure whatever you're trying to do, we can build.
All right, guys, any other questions?
All right. Well, doesn't look like anybody's firing any more questions. People are leaving the meeting, so thank you everybody for showing up. I'm going to drop off here, and I'm sure Chris is going to wrap this up. Thanks for attending.
All right, guys.